I didn't know what she meant at first. I laughed, because that's what you do when someone says something that lands too close without explaining why. But the laugh came out wrong. Too fast, like I was trying to brush past something sharp. She noticed. Of course she did. The place smelled like dust and old paper. A used bookstore tucked between a closed pharmacy and a cafe that never quite woke up before noon. I was there because my friend asked me to help his sister reorganize after a minor flood. Nothing dramatic, just a burst pipe and a weekend of ruined cardboard boxes. I expected chaos. What I found was order held together by stubborn hands. She was kneeling on the floor when I walked in, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hair pulled back with a pencil. Mid-40s, maybe more. Calm in a way that didn't ask for attention. She looked up once, quick and assessing, then went back to stacking books like they were listening to her. "You're late," she said, not accusing. "Just factual." "I missed the bus," I said. I always explain myself too much. She smiled without looking at me. "That happens." Her voice was low, steady, the kind that doesn't rush to fill space. It made the room feel quieter than it already was. I stood there holding an empty box, suddenly unsure where to put my hands. We worked side by side for a while. No music, just the soft thud of books, the creak of shelves. Every so often she'd hand me one and our fingers would touch, brief, accidental, but enough to make me aware of my own breathing. She never reacted. That somehow made it worse. At one point I reached too high, tipped a stack, and a paperback slid off the shelf. I caught it against my chest, heart jumping like I'd been caught doing something wrong. "Careful," she said, finally looking at me. Her eyes were sharp, amused. "Those bite." I checked the cover. Some old romance novel with a cracked spine. "I'll survive." That's what people always say. She took it from me, her hand brushing my wrist. Not lingering. Not avoiding it either. Later, when we took a break, she poured coffee into mismatched mugs. Mine had a chip. Hers didn't. She noticed me noticing. "It was my mother's," she said. "The good one." "Oh," I said. Then, because silence makes me nervous, I can switch. She shook her head. "No, you're fine." The way she said it, like a decision already made my stomach tighten. We sat on overturned crates, knees almost touching. She asked what I did, where I was headed. I talked too much. About plans that weren't solid. Jobs I hadn't stayed at long. She listened without interrupting, nodding at the wrong places, like she was paying attention to something underneath. When my phone buzzed, I ignored it. When I realized what I was doing, it was too late. She leaned back, studied me for a second, then smiled again. This one was different. Softer. Curious. "You know," she said, stirring her coffee though it didn't need it. "You don't know how dangerous you are." I opened my mouth. Closed it. "Dangerous how?" She stood, picked up her mug, and walked away toward the back room. "That's the problem," she said. "You think you need to ask." She didn't look back. But I stood there long after, holding a chipped mug I didn't want, replaying the way she said dangerous. Not like a warning, but like something already in motion. I went back the next week under the excuse of returning boxes she hadn't asked for. The truth was thinner than that. I just wanted to see if the quiet felt the same when she was in it. It was raining this time, the kind that blurs the windows and makes everything inside feel suspended. She was behind the counter, glasses on, hair loose around her shoulders like she'd given up on controlling it. She looked tired. Not fragile, just worn in a way that didn't ask for fixing. "You didn't have to come," she said when she saw me. "I know," I said. Then, softer, "I wanted to." She nodded once, like she was filing that away somewhere she didn't want to visit yet. "Well, if you're here, you might as well help." We worked on inventory this time. Slow, tedious. She kept her distance, moving with purpose, not bumping into me the way she had before. It felt intentional. I caught myself watching her hands as she wrote, steady, precise, a faint ink smudge on her thumb she didn't notice. When she laughed at something I said, it surprised both of us. The laugh came out quick, then stopped, like she'd remembered something mid-breath. "Sorry," she said. "Long day." "You don't have to apologize," I said. She looked at me then, really looked, like she was deciding how much of herself to show a stranger who wasn't one anymore. "I do," she said. I have a habit of letting things linger. I didn't know what to do with that, so I let it sit between us. The rain got louder. A customer came in, then left. Time moved in strange, uneven steps. At one point she reached for a book and hesitated, fingers hovering like she'd forgotten what she was doing. She pulled her hand back, rubbed her wrist. "You okay?" I asked. She shrugged. "Just tired. I forget I'm not 20 anymore." I wanted to say something reassuring. Something easy. Instead I said, "You don't look it." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "That's not a compliment," she said gently. "It's a misunderstanding." I nodded, embarrassed. Watched her turn away. For a moment, her shoulders slumped, just a fraction, before she straightened again. That small crack stayed with me longer than anything she'd said. Near closing time, the lights flickered. She swore under her breath, a word I didn't expect, and laughed at herself right after. I handed her the flashlight from my phone. Our fingers brushed. This time, she didn't pull away. "Thank you," she said, quieter than before. "For the light?" I asked. She shook her head. "For not pushing." I didn't know what she meant exactly. I only knew I didn't want to move. The rain eased. The shop felt too small, or maybe too honest. She stepped back, creating space again, but her eyes stayed on mine a beat longer than necessary. "Lock up when you're done," she said, already turning away. I stood there alone, the flashlight still on, wondering if that pause, just before she let go, meant anything at all. We stayed late because the delivery was wrong. 2 boxes mislabeled, one soaked through, the rest stacked like they expected someone else to deal with them. She sighed when she saw them, rolled her shoulders once like she was bracing herself. "It'll be quick," she said. "I hope." The lights hummed after closing, louder without customers to absorb the sound. Outside, the street was empty, wet pavement reflecting the bookstore sign like a second, shakier version of itself. She ordered takeout without asking what I wanted. I didn't mind. It felt easier to let her decide. We ate standing up, cartons balanced on a counter that still smelled faintly of cleaner. She kicked off her shoes, tucked one foot under the other. I noticed the faint tremor in her hands when she lifted her fork, how she paused between bites like she was counting something. "You don't have to stay," she said again. "I know," I said again. Then I added, "I'm okay." She watched me for a moment, then turned back to the boxes. We worked closer than before, too close to avoid brushing shoulders, close enough that I could feel the heat from her arm. When she leaned over to read a label, her hair fell forward, and I caught the scent of something clean and familiar. Soap, maybe, or paper. She told me about the flood in more detail this time. How it happened early in the morning, how she'd stood there barefoot, watching water spread like it had somewhere to be. She laughed once, sharp and brief. I just kept thinking, this is what happens when you don't keep up. With pipes? I asked. With things, she said. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, face changing in a way that felt private. She didn't pick it up right away. When it buzzed again, she turned it face down. You don't have to. I started. It's fine, she said too quickly. Then, quieter, it's not. She answered on the third buzz, stepping away, but not far enough for the words to disappear completely. I caught fragments. A name. A sigh. I told you. Silence. No, I'm working. Another pause. Please don't. She ended the call and stood there for a second, phone still at her ear, like she'd forgotten what it was for. When she turned back, her eyes were bright in a way that made me look away. Sorry, she said. That was old noise. You don't have to explain, I said, and meant it. She nodded, but her mouth tightened. We finished the last box in silence. When I lifted it, the bottom gave way and books spilled out. She laughed, then stopped herself, covering her mouth like she'd said too much. I'm a mess tonight, she said. You're human, I said. It came out softer than I intended. She met my eyes. Really met them. That's the part I'm trying to be careful with. The power flickered. Instinctively, she reached for me. Her hand landed on my forearm, fingers curling slightly, then froze. We were close enough that I could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the way her breath hitched and steadied. I didn't move. I wanted to. I didn't. She pulled her hand back slowly, like it mattered how she did it. I should lock up, she said. Yeah, I said, though neither of us moved right away. For a second, it felt like we were both waiting for the same wrong thing to happen, and neither of us brave enough to stop it. The next time, she didn't ask me to help. I showed up anyway. The shop was closed, lights dimmed to that after-hours half-glow that makes everything look like it's holding its breath. She was sitting at the small desk near the back, coat still on, hands folded like she'd been waiting. Not for me specifically, just for something to end. You shouldn't be here, she said. I know, I said. The words felt thin. She stood before I could finish. Not abruptly, just decided. She walked past me, turned the lock on the door, then leaned her forehead against the glass for a second longer than necessary. I saw her reflection more than her face. We need to stop pretending, she said, still not looking at me. My stomach tightened. Pretending what? She turned then. Slowly. Her eyes weren't sharp this time. They were tired. That this is just help. Or coincidence. Or timing. I swallowed. The room felt smaller, like the shelves had inched closer while we weren't watching. I never said it was. No, she said. You don't say things. That's part of it. She crossed her arms, then dropped them, like she couldn't decide what to do with herself. I keep thinking if I stay quiet, it'll pass. Like a headache. But it doesn't. I didn't trust my voice. I nodded instead. She laughed then, once, without humor. Do you know how unfair it is, she said, to be noticed this late? I looked at her hands. They were trembling now. Not much. Enough. I'm not doing anything, I said. I swear. I know, she said quickly. That's what makes it worse. Silence settled between us, heavy and unhelpful. The hum of the refrigerator in the back room. A car passing outside. Normal sounds that felt intrusive. I keep replaying conversations, she went on, softer now. Things you didn't even mean. The way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. She shook her head. I don't get to want things like that anymore. Not without consequences. I don't want to be a consequence, I said. She met my eyes. Held them. You already are. That landed somewhere deep. I felt the urge to step closer, to say something reckless and honest and stupid. I didn't. I stayed where I was, hands at my sides, like restraint was the only thing I had to offer. She took a breath, then another. This can't keep going, she said. Whatever this is. What if it already has? I asked. I hated myself a little for asking. Her face softened, just for a second. Enough to hurt. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. She reached out, stopped herself halfway, and let her hand fall back to her side. The space between us felt deliberate. Chosen. Painful. I need you to understand something, she said quietly. If I let myself lean into this, even a little, I don't know how to come back. I nodded, throat tight. Okay. She looked relieved. And devastated. Good, she whispered. Because I think I already did. I thought the shift would be loud. An argument. A goodbye. Something clear enough to bruise. Instead, it came folded inside an envelope I almost didn't notice. I was helping her move a shelf, just a few inches, nothing structural, when it slid loose from behind the register. Old mail mostly. Receipts. A postcard with a faded beach. One envelope thicker than the rest, edges worn soft. It fell open when it hit the floor. She froze. I'm sorry, I said immediately, crouching to gather the mess. I didn't mean to. Leave it, she said. Not sharp. Just final. I stopped. Watched her kneel instead, slower than she used to, like her knees remembered things before she did. She picked up the envelope, thumb pressing against the crease, hesitating. Then she exhaled and handed it to me. It's not a secret, she said. Just not something I take out often. Inside was a photo. Not old. Maybe 10 years. A man standing in front of this same shop, younger shelves behind him, arms slung loosely around her shoulders. He was smiling at the camera. She wasn't. She was looking at him. He helped me open the place, she said. Before what went unsaid. I studied the photo longer than I should have. Not because of him. Because of her. The version of her caught mid-lean, mid-trust. You look happy, I said. She tilted her head. I looked certain. That too, I said, though I wasn't sure. She took the photo back, slid it carefully into the envelope. Her fingers lingered, smoothing it like it could crease again from memory alone. He left, she said. Not suddenly. Worse. Slowly. Promises turned into plans that never happened. She gave a small, self-aware smile. He used to say I made him feel younger. Like that was a gift. I didn't know what to do with that, so I stayed quiet. She glanced at me, then away. When you're around, I don't feel younger, she said. I feel seen. And that scares me more. My chest tightened. Because of him? Because of me, she said. Because I didn't see it coming last time. I thought attention meant safety. She reached into a drawer, pulled out her phone, tapped once, then set it on the counter between us. A voicemail. Unplayed. He called last week, she said. I haven't listened. Why not? I asked. She shrugged. If I don't hear it, it can't rearrange anything. I looked at the phone, then back at her. Do you want me to stay while you do? She considered that. Really considered it. Then shook her head. No. I want you to hear it. My breath caught. Me? She nodded. Because whatever he says, it won't be about you. And that matters. She pressed play and stepped back. The voice was calm, familiar, apologetic in a practiced way. He talked about regret, timing, wondered if she was still there, still the same. She didn't react. Not visibly. When it ended, the shop felt hollowed out. Well, I said finally. She smiled, small and steady. You don't sound like him. No, I said. I don't. She met my eyes then. Not searching. Deciding. That's the shift, she said quietly. The voicemail sat between us like something fragile we'd agreed not to touch again. She didn't put the phone away. She didn't reach for it either. Just stood there, hands loose at her sides, breathing like she was learning a new rhythm. I don't want to pretend anymore, she said, not looking at me. My first instinct was to answer too fast. I stopped myself. Let the silence do some of the work for once. Pretend what? She exhaled through her nose. Almost a laugh. That this is harmless. Or temporary. Or something I can compartmentalize if I'm careful enough. I leaned against the counter. Not closer. Not farther. And if you don't pretend? She turned then. Her eyes were steady, but there was a softness there I hadn't seen before. Less defensive. More resolved. Then I have to admit, I'm choosing something without knowing how it ends. That sounds like most things, I said. She nodded. That's what scares me. We stood there like that, the shop around us dim and familiar. The hum of the lights. The faint smell of paper and dust and coffee that had been reheated too many times. It felt less like a turning point and more like settling into something that had already been happening. I don't want to rush you, I said. Or push. Or turn into a mistake you explain away later. Her mouth tightened at that. You're not a mistake, she said. Then paused. But you could become one if we don't do this right. I watched her fingers curl and uncurl at her sides. The same micro-movement she made when she was tired. Or thinking too hard. What's right? I asked. She took a step toward me. Just one. Closed the distance enough that I could feel the heat from her body, the quiet certainty of her presence. Slow, she said. Honest. With room to stop if it gets too heavy. I nodded. I can do slow. I know, she said. That's why I trust you more than I should. That landed somewhere deep and strange. Not flattering. Weighty. She sat on the edge of the counter, suddenly looking her age in a way that felt intimate rather than fragile. I sat on the stool across from her. Our knees didn't touch. Not yet. I don't need you to promise anything, she said. I just need you to stay present. Not idealize this. Or me. I see you. I said before I could stop myself. She went very still. After a moment, she reached out and rested her hand on mine. No squeeze. No claim. Just contact. Her skin was warm. Real. The tremor in her fingers faded slowly, like it had finally found somewhere to rest. We stayed like that. Not talking. Not moving. The shop felt different. Less like a place we were passing through. More like something we were inhabiting together. Eventually, she leaned her forehead against my shoulder. Just for a second. Just enough. Okay, she said quietly. And nothing else needed to be said. I didn't realize how much changed until someone asked me about her like she was a chapter that had already ended. They said her name casually, the way you do when you assume nothing important happened. I felt it then, that quiet internal shift. Not sharp, not painful, just settled, like something had been placed where it belonged. We never announced anything. There was no moment where the world tilted or people noticed. What happened between us was quieter than that. Slower. It grew in the spaces we stopped filling with excuses. I stopped trying to impress her. That was the first change. I didn't need to be interesting or useful or harmless. I just showed up when I said I would. I listened more than I spoke. I learned when silence wasn't avoidance, but respect. She changed too, though she'd never frame it that way. She stopped apologizing for pauses, for needing time, for not having neat answers. Sometimes she'd catch herself explaining, then stop mid-sentence and smile like she'd remembered she didn't have to earn patience anymore. What we shared didn't feel like intensity. It felt like steadiness. Mornings that didn't rush. Evenings where we sat next to each other doing separate things, legs touching just enough to remind us we weren't alone. When things got hard, we said so. When they got too heavy, we stepped back without disappearing. I learned that love, real love, the kind that doesn't beg or perform, doesn't make you feel younger or older. It makes you feel present, accountable, seen in ways that don't ask you to become someone else. She once told me that what scared her most wasn't the age gap or the timing or what people might think. It was the idea of choosing something that didn't come with guarantees and staying anyway. I think that's where we met, in that choice. Sometimes I think back to the first day in the bookstore. The way she looked at me when she said, "You don't know how dangerous you are." I finally understand what she meant. Not dangerous because I was tempting or reckless. Dangerous because I stayed. And she let me. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?